I am very honored to be here with you folks and to talk to you a little bit about politics, a little bit about where we're at right now, and maybe take a few questions. I promise you I'm going to get you out of here early because we just did an event last night in San Jose with 1,200 people, and it was packed theater, an incredible event where we went for a good long time. And then we just did an event this afternoon over at the University of Arizona where we couldn't see the end of the crowd. There were so many people there. It was an absolutely amazing. Now, I would love to tell you that they came just to see me. And obviously, I would imagine that's really the deep motivation of it. But it happened that I was there with a fellow named Bernie Sanders. And you'd be surprised how writing books with Bernie Sanders and traveling with him, knowing him over the years, I can tell you, the guy knows how to draw a crowd. And it's a very interesting thing. He and I usually, before we do an event, we go take a walk, right? I live in Madison, Wisconsin. I don't leave it very often. I love Madison. And he lives in Burlington, Vermont. So we don't always, we're on the phone a lot. And you know that in 2020, 2021, during the worst of COVID, and I have my mask here too, so I'm standing far enough away, I think we're in good shape. But I believe in all this. During the worst of COVID in 2020 and 2021, I didn't go to Washington. Wasn't there once. And so I didn't see Bernie in person that much, Senator in person that much. And then as we were writing the book, we did see each other quite a bit, but still a lot on the phone. So usually before we do an event, we go take a walk. And I got to tell you, that is an interesting experience. It is a really, because we'll go for a good long walk, probably, a couple miles. And we usually walk through the neighborhoods or wherever. And we were walking here through Tucson early this afternoon, and we came around the corner, and there's these two people standing in front of their house, and they're like, Bernie Sanders! So what are you doing here? And we said, well, we were looking for you. Finally found you. We went block after block. But the even better thing, we got some young people here, which I truly appreciate. I know some of you are very active, doing lots of tremendous work. Is the young people coming by, and it's nigh on hilarious, because there are people who will hit the brakes in their car, and they go, "Is that Bernie Sanders?" And they'll like jump out of the car. All of them leave the car running and jump out to do the selfie. And in politics, celebrity is a weird thing, right? We're not really well served by celebrity politicians, to be honest. By and large, it's not what it's about. Politics should always be about ideas. It ought to be about values. It ought to be about what you seek to accomplish and hopefully getting it done. The challenge is, though, that you want to have people who can make that connection, right? It is an electoral process. And if you had told me 20 years ago, and I've known the senator for about 30 years, if you told me 20 years ago, yep, Bernie Sanders is going to be recognized on every street in America, and cars are going to squeal to a halt, young women are going to run across the parking lots, and literally I started pumping gas. Today we were walking along, walked by a gas station, somebody was pumping gas and ran over, get the selfie. And if they had said that, I would have said, I'm not sure. Gruff but lovable. But you know what the weird thing about it is? This is the weird thing about it, is Bernie Sanders didn't do that. He didn't do that by compromising. He didn't do that by going soft on the issues he cared about. And he also didn't do that by just, it's probably being like such a purist that he couldn't compete on the national level. He did both. That's what I'm talking about. He stayed who he was. You can't really change the guy. But he also ran for president of the United States. Ran twice, you may have noticed. And you also may have noticed that he didn't win. But here's the bottom line. In politics, you don't have to win. I wish, winning is important. It is vital, right? And that is competing for power is what this is about. But the notion that the only point of a political campaign is victory, right? That is also something people miss out on sometimes, right? You can win without winning. Now, I will tell you in our book, the book that we just put out, we write a lot about Eugene Victor Debs. That he was the Socialist Party candidate for president 5 times in the early 20th century. As you may note, those who know your history, he never won. He was a union organizer. He was a railroad worker. Head of the railroad workers. He took them out on strike repeatedly. And then he got into politics. He ran again and again for president of the United States. Here's the interesting thing about Eugene Victor Debs. He didn't get elected, but he put ideas on the table. And those ideas, which he put on the table in the 1910s, early 1920s, somehow they resonated. He said, as an example, this very radical notion. He said that older people who had worked their whole life ought to get some kind of monthly payment, right? They ought to get something to help them survive. That nobody who had worked their whole life should then go into poverty, which is what actually happened. Sure. And they had a weird name for it. They called it Social Security, right? And he talked about that. He said there ought to be laws that make it easier to organize unions because everybody should be in a union. He said that you ought to have some basic rights to education and access to all sorts of things like this. Well, you take a look at the New Deal, right? Yeah. That happened. Eugene Victor Debs died in 25, I believe, 24, 25. New Deal came 7 years later. He never saw it. But here's the bottom line. You take a look at what the New Deal did. Franklin Roosevelt wasn't a socialist. But boy, did he steal a lot of ideas, right? And that's the point of it. You can sometimes run and lose and actually shape the future. And frankly, I think that's what Bernie Sanders has done. The fact is, Bernie Sanders ran for President of the United States twice. He didn't win, but boy, did he shape a lot of future, right?